Good evening, my lovelies, and welcome. I'm Lady McCreepster. It is Halloween evening, my lovelies, the night when the veil thins, and as promised, I have an extra special feature for you this evening. This tale is by author Steven Aguilera and is entitled The Devil's Grave. Before we dive into this tale, though, my dears, a quick thank you to my dark family on Patreon for your continuous support. Family members such as Danny White, Nicholas Corries, Dawn Fritzwater, Cyanide Jack, Melissa Perez, Honey Santiago, Oliver Dace, Karen Parrott, L. Andrew Augustus, Dana Fringer, Steven Aguilera, Tay the Fluth, Bill Thornsley, Laura Setta-Penry, and all of those listed in the description below. Your contributions and support keep this channel and podcast going and is deeply, deeply appreciated. If you too would like to join my dark family, go to patreon.com/Lady McCreepster for more information. But now though, my dears, it is time. So come, lean in closer, and we'll begin. Two stone lions guard the entrance of Sutro Heights Park. A small dog similarly posed reclines beside them. Holding its leash, a black man in his 60s leans on a well-worn cane. Two policemen approach. A blonde woman in a pantsuit tags after. Sergeant West, the middle-aged man states. He introduces his rook. Officer Rico. The young patrolman wiggles his fingers at the Yorkshire Terrier. The woman glances at the dog with indifference and holds up her badge with a strained smile. Detective Bugby. The man looks over and smirks. Follow me. He leads them through the morning San Francisco fog. They arrive at the savagely mutilated body of a blonde woman with a nearly severed head. Her final instant of terror can still be discerned on what's left of a clenched face. The detective stares. Did a human even do this? Sergeant West watches her with misgiving. Detective. The man's dog whimpers. Easy, girl. I estimate it's been here 5 hours. Lack of blood or clothing suggests she was murdered elsewhere. But look, no flies. Isn't that odd? The sergeant darts him a suspicious look. You in law enforcement, sir? He returns a smug grin. No. Then why aren't you throwing up right now? Dr. Daniel G. Davis, mortician. I've seen it all. Bugby locks eyes with him. Then, sir, can you explain why everything else 10 feet around her body is dead too? Disconcerted, David and the policeman look down and around. Indeed, the corpse lays in the center of a perfect circle of sparse, dead grass. The rook takes him by the arm, startling him. Sir, please step back. Body could be radioactive for all we know. Davis turns to find his dog already standing outside of the circle. A week follows. Davis approaches the crime scene with his Yorkie. Sacks of fertilizer sit beside an Americanized Chinese man in his 30s, tearing up the soil with a motorized tiller. Excuse me, I'm the one who found the body here last week. He goes mostly unheard and ignored as the bony man wrestles with his machine. With a tap on his shoulder, he finds Detective Bugby forcing a delighted face. Mr. Davis, is there something I can help you with, sir? The groundkeeper's big, thick glasses magnify his eyes as he glimpses her backside. Oh, have they determined how the remains created this odd circle? Well, we are still in the process of... Wait, the groundskeeper says. Who you say you are? I'm the one to interview. I've been spreading fertilizer over this 15 years. He pauses to reflect on his life choices. Davis's eyes grow wide. 15 years? Don't rub it in. No, I mean, what in heaven's name would cause... The man shuts off his motor. I'll tell you exactly what, and you can quote me. An unidentified flying saucer. Condescendingly, Davis opens his mouth to say object, but reconsiders. Thank you, Chai, says the detective. Her disinterest in his theory is not lost on him as he restarts his tiller. The dog grows apprehensive. Have there been reports of UFOs landing here, Detective? I didn't say anything about landing. It's actually deep down there. Must have crashed before the Great Ice Age and is still shooting deadly cosmic rays up through my lawn. Noting the dog's behavior, Bugbee gasps. Stop! Surprised, then perturbed, he powers down. She slips on a latex glove, reaches into the soil, and extracts a human ear. Looks like you missed some, Chai tells her. His patronizing tone is not lost on her. Davis inserts himself. No, this is much older. The next morning finds a tent over their location. The detective and Davis watch as crime scene investigators unearth the grotesque severed head of a blonde woman with a missing ear. Bugbee peers to Sergeant West, who nods. By his side, Rico observes. So, what are you a doctor of? I hold a doctorate in theology. He pauses. That's the study of religious truth. She smiles politely. Thank you. Are you a minister then too? Yes. You spiritual at all yourself? No. The conversation fizzles. Could these murders be ritualistic? Decapitated blondes in a circle probably symbolizes something. But you don't really know. He gives her a side look. The sergeant smiles with his eyes. With some kind of ace up her sleeve, she peeks at the others and asks, Well, Mr. Davis, when would you place the time of death on this one? He squats to the remains, leaning heavily on his cane. Clearly still in the first stage of decomposition, yet it would take months to dry out to this degree. How can that be in this climate? She crosses her arms with an air of self-satisfaction. He gathers his thoughts. Of course, the killer must have used excessive quicklime to mask the smell and repel animals, disintegrated the rest of her body and killed everything around it too. Also acts as a dehydrating agent, explaining the mummified state. He stands proudly. The Roark seems impressed. She offers an empty nod. Interesting, but based on her fashion sense and initial tests, it appears she's been down here a good 90 years, and we found no trace of quicklime to explain her lack of decomposition. He frowns, gazing upon the 25-foot round patch of barren earth. A look of realization washes over him. Because even the bacteria are dead. She opens her mouth to discount his theory, but cannot. Oh, you didn't catch that? She glances to her disenchanted sergeant. Davis leans in. Either way, I guess this scratches me off your suspect list. She climbs up. Let's take a walk. Avoiding eye contact with her staring colleagues, she follows him out. He leads her down the main dirt path in earshot of the Pacific. This park, it was named after Adolf Sutro. He was born in Aachen, Prussia, in 1830 and made his fortune in the silver mining industry. How interesting, she says in a snotty sing-song voice. In 1881, he bought what became Sutro Heights and constructed a public garden filled with statues, forests, and even a hedge maze. His family lived here in a cottage. His daughter remained until her death in 1938. She halts. That's about when this Jane Doe died. She was laid to rest elsewhere. He resumes their stroll. Oh. They approach the park gateway. The family donated it all to the city and it was demolished a year later except for these stone lion sentinels still guarding the entrance. They pass a historical plaque with a description of the original estate. Sorry, I'm confused. How exactly does all this tie in with our murder scene? That's just it. None of it does. Sutro did have some bad luck, but his successes, in the end, far outweighed his failures. I have nothing to explain why those women were placed at that spot on his former estate, 9 decades apart. Some piece of her appreciates his honesty. A thought unsettles him. And never mind the fact it would take something inhuman to kill like that, and for this long. There is a crash from the tent. She charges back, leaving him hobbling behind. Reaching the site, he attempts to steady his breathing. The sergeant and rookie heave an uninjured investigator from the collapsed earth. Davis inspects a breached wooden layer in the center of the lifeless circle. What is that? Rico asks. A coffin? Sergeant West studies the damage. Your thoughts? Bugby puts on a confident face. Well, this whole park actually used to be the land of Rudolf Sutro. The rook corrects her. Adolf. She tells him, shut up, in a perky way. The sergeant grimaces. Detective. And, she continues, it obviously had this old graveyard. She snaps her fingers, which also explains this woman from the 1930s. West nods. I was asking Dr. Davis. She recoils. Davis stoops and peers into the dark cavity. I believe you're rushing to conclusions. She shrinks and gives Rico a dirty look. 2 hours go by. A ladder is lowered through the dim, dusty air. Chai pokes his head down and snorts. Whoa, spooky. Ew, gross. Bugby slaps his shoulder. Move. The ladder creaks as she descends into the cottage's cellar with flashlight in hand. Furniture and broken statues, thick with dust, are piled here and there. Quite a coincidence this was directly under the crime scene, Davis says from above. She looks to him and gives pause, then grips her growing headache. There is a thud, followed by a settling sound. She draws her firearm and creeps towards a dark doorway, only to find it leading to a collapsed hallway. Chai brightens up. Hey Gwen, ever watch Unsolved Paranormal Investigator Files? She holsters her weapon and groans. That's not exactly standard procedure. 5 days elapse. Davis, running late, yanks open the tent. He is startled by a woman with big hair and a spray tan that is 2 shades too dark. She shrieks and scurries around him while holding her chest. Close behind are a crew with cameras, mics, and other curious equipment. Chai follows with Bugbee, both gasping amid swirls of dust. "What happened?" Grinning, she elbows her way to the front. "Dr. Davis, thank you, but dust, that's what happened," the psychic theatrically declares with a Texas accent. "I have asthma. I could have died down there." But no presence, no evidence or impressions. I'm not at all psychic, and that place at least gives me the heebie-jeebies. The psychic glares at Bugbee. "I felt nothing there at all. Let's go." Wishing she were somewhere else, Bugbee gives Chai an icy stare. With the dust settling, Bugbee and Davis descend into the cellar. "Regardless of its cause," he stated with a cough, "it's clear that once we step out, our bodies do rejuvenate." "Fine." Fixating on a dead rat, his disencouragement weighs heavy. "The key to all this has to be in here somewhere. This place, it's like a magnet for death." She sits on a folding chair and pouts. He stares into space. "Do you think it's a coincidence I was here to find both bodies, Detective?" A chill runs up her spine. "Why do you say that?" "Death's lure." He senses the weight of her scrutiny. "I am a mortician." She looks him dead in the eye. "And I'm in homicide." He gives her a prolonged side look, then smiles. "We're not so different." She starts fake coughing. He sits beside her. "This may surprise you, Detective, but I haven't always been this happy-go-lucky. Death and I have been chasing each other my whole life." He coughs and waves his cane. "I actually consider myself a detective of sorts, trying to crack the greatest mystery of them all." "Let me guess, you with a Bible, me with a gun?" He goes serious. "One might question God, but no one can question death. It is the one certainty that cannot be denied by anyone." She tenders no response. He chokes and takes deliberate breaths. "It is dusty in here." "But that's not why you can't breathe, is it?" She regards him with some sympathy but snaps herself out of it. Her flashlight lingers onto the floor where something catches her eye. "See that?" "That's a lot of dead bugs." "No, wood's not rotted there." She kneels and brushes away debris. He leans in, and there's a faint discoloration. She follows it with her light. "It's a giant circle." He gives her an astonished look. "That's actually a sharp observation there, Detective." She flashes a sickly smile. "Thanks." Nearly a month comes to pass. The site has become a research excavation. Half a dozen students from Berkeley comb a large circular area of unnoteworthy soil. At the center, a pretty but exhausted postgraduate student mutters, Is that a... Her professor steps in and brushes soil from a woman's mummified head having long, blonde hair. The fuck? These are like no human remains I've seen. Chai rushes in. Is that bitch alien? Let me see. A little respect, Davis shouts from the opposite side. No, the professor says. I mean, these aren't modern. I don't know how old, but the preservation is fucking remarkable. Davis examines it with wonder. Dear God, how far back does this go? Bugbee observes from the surface with dark circles around her eyes. Her phone buzzes. It reads, "Call from Sergeant West." She lets it go to voicemail. With another month, a stone sacrificial altar has been uncovered at the center of the circle. The heads of countless women are piled around it, preserved with disturbing detail down to their final expressions. They end abruptly around the edge, anything beyond, long reduced to dust. The crew have gone for the day. With a pretentious flair, Dr. Davis presents his observations to Chai, who films him. What is it? Genetic memory? I don't know, but for centuries, Western art depicted angels as blonde, as if purer, the opposite of evil. Behind the seated men, Bugbee eavesdrops. Still, there shouldn't have been any blondes here yet. Who were these people? Chai pans to their remains. Dickwit cavemen trying to appease to some dickwit curse. Davis looks glumly upon their grisly setting. It's more than that. It would seem that this circle doesn't just kill, it compels one to kill others. Ill at ease, Chai lowers his camera. With regretful eyes, Davis mumbles. But cutting off their heads still doesn't make the pain go away. His startling statement captures Bugbee's attention. Chai raises his eyebrows. Realizing what just slipped from his own mouth, Davis gives Chai a long, sinister side look. She quietly motions toward her Glock 22. No one moves a muscle. Davis winks. Dick, you almost gave me a heart attack. Well, this place could have some levity. Frustrated, she collects herself. Chai settles down. And Gwen still has no clue who killed that lady. Davis goes sober. Half the park tore up and she still hasn't even found her clothes. Yeah, she should just go back to burglary at this point. Everyone knows by now she's a shitty homicide detective. Decent titties, though. And what's your theory? She challenges. Chai flinches. Alien autopsy? No, he says with a red, pouty face. She targets Davis. Or let me guess, the Antichrist, a demon? You really should keep your mind open to all possibilities, detective. She stares daggers at him. Oh, I have been. He takes a breath. And have you noticed? Everyone starts off real gung-ho here, but turn bored real quick. Then there's an argument or all-out fistfight. Eventually, it's like they're dead inside. We keep making stupid mistakes, having accidents, getting sick. Never mind the host of mental disorders. Like paranoia, Chai boldly asserts. She steps into his personal space and moistens her lips. With a feminine touch, she places a caressing hand on his shoulder, her breasts in proximity of his face. His smugness evaporates. He tries to look away but succumbs and begins to sweat. She holds out her palm. You're pure evil, he grumbles while handing over his camera. Davis continues. But I don't believe in curses myself, dickwit or otherwise, and I'm sure modern man can address whatever's down here. We just need to keep our cool. Besides, everything encountered so far has been harmlessly dead. Chai looks to the innumerable corpses. That's not very comforting. She becomes riveted by something in the circle and charges to the altar. Touching the back of a severed head, fresh blood transfers to her fingers. She She recognizes the pretty postgraduate student's face, frozen with a look of shock. Davis and Chai stand. Pulling her weapon, she swings it at them. Chai carefully positions himself to shield Davis. "Get out of the circle, Gwen!" Seething with hate, she shows great inner conflict. "Detective!" She looks up to find Sergeant West scowling from the surface. Gun drawn, Rico looks anxiously to him for direction. Davis's recent words sink in. And she lowers her firearm. Rico rushes his way down. She makes reluctant eye contact with her sergeant. He does not look happy. Now 20 feet deeper, another 2 months have elapsed. Davis perches himself above the dig. With cold, dead eyes, he beholds large and small mummified dinosaurs being uncovered from the compacted volcanic ash. They appear to have died in anguish. The giant head and torso of a terrifying unknown beast lay before him. Another 3 months transpire. Davis is donned in minister's robes at his mortuary. A family grieves before an open casket. Staring at a vase of white roses, he extracts one. His phone buzzes. From Chai Lam. Message: "Dan, you won't believe this." He raises an eyebrow. An hour later, he finds himself back at Sutro Heights Park. From the surface, he looks down onto a gleaming black 25-foot wide disc deep in the excavation. Chai looks like he hasn't slept in days, but is nonetheless elated. "Shit, that's at least 150 million years old based on the dinosaurs above it." Dumbfounded, David musters the question. "A flying saucer? Come with me." He rushes them to the lowest level. It's actually a flat piece of polished stone, about 5 feet thick, formed into a mathematically perfect circle. David visually inspects the smooth, precise surface. It's exquisite. Cautiously, he reaches out, but retracts and looks to Chai. "Go ahead." With a light touch, he recoils. "Cold. Not according to any thermometer. Is this granite?" "More or less. Geologist says nothing like it in the area, and no markings of any kind." Davis is mystified. What could be its purpose? And how is it so toxic to life? Bugbee chimes in. "Take a look on top." He's briefly bewildered at seeing her in standard police uniform. Inspecting the top surface, he discovers a faint discolored circle all the way around it. "Oh, you didn't catch that?" she asks, her venom thinly veiled. "Whatever's under," Chai says, "it's powerful enough to burn that ring through this thick-ass stone and the 40 feet of stuff above it. Pretty sure someone was trying real hard to block that shit, like a shield." Davis smiles. "Resembles a grave marker." "So you think it's a tomb?" "I'm a mortician, but at this point, I'm wondering if we'll let the devil out if we dig deep enough." "Well, it preserved everything else." Their attention shifts to Bugbee's chilling stare, which mutates into a soft, demented smile. After a month of preparation, the tent has been replaced with a massive crawler crane, its steel cabling securely affixed to the mysterious megalith. A heavy chain also encircles the piece, adjoining to a bulldozer beside it at the bottom of the excavation. It is mid-afternoon. David spells things out. "It's Berkeley's call now, Sergeant. Worst case scenario, we'll have our backup shield." West's nod shows a hint of distrust. With some indignity, Bugbee stands in uniform beside Rico the Rook. The hulking bulldozer powers up with a boom. They move back to a safe distance, now unable to see below. Sweating, Davis consciously controls his breathing. The colossal crane beside them grumbles to life. Rico gestures the sign of the cross. Soon, it strains to its limit. The operator looks to the signal person and shakes his head. But, with a tug from the bulldozer, the ancient stonework abruptly separates from the earth. There is a deafening moan as smoke and ash shoot upwards. The signal person indicates all stop. Their tension mounts as they wait an extended period for the haze to dissipate. The signal person eventually nods to someone below with a simple hand gesture, orders the lift to continue. Rising several yards, a loud snap jolts the crew. The Goliath stone shows a fracture. The signal person urgently motions for the operator to lower it back down, but it's too late. The stone buckles and its immense pieces crash down into a plume of soot. They creep forward to witness the damage beneath. The atmosphere settles, revealing a perfectly circular pit. Davis stares in awe. An abyss. The sergeant looks to Rico and then to Davis. Like a bottomless pit. Bugbee gapes. Biblically, the abyss is the abode of the beast and the common receptacle of the dead. Hell. Wait, she utters, the bulldozer. The crew are aghast at the revelation that, with the falling chunks, the formidable machine and its occupant had been dragged in. The sun is now several hours set. Chai steps off the ladder and onto the evacuation base, electrical cables draped over him every which way. He helps Davis find stable footing off the bottom rung. Wearing a backpack, Bugbee descends next with 3 vest harnesses and rope. Unable to see the surface through the fog, she raises a walkie-talkie. Radio check. Roger, West replies. Chai snorts, hawks, and launches a thick mixture of mucus and saliva into the abyss from a few yards away. That's disgusting! All net. Hey, a little respect, Davis shouts. A subtle draft rises from the ghastly vent. She looks Chai in the eye for a drawn-out moment, and then hands him his camera. He shrieks and snatches it, pointing it at her. He switches it on, intentionally stunning her with blinding light. Oh good, you charged it. Chai, this isn't that show, just document. Finally, I'll be hosting that shit after this. Davis beholds the round, unholy abomination. This is bad. She takes off her backpack. Then you shouldn't have volunteered us. He closes his eyes and recites. He opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened. Chai directs the camera at him. Chai! Chai! She shouts. Can you turn that dang light off and plug us in, please? Can you do that? Why not? She surveys their bleak surroundings and shivers. Evil angels sentenced to the abyss long before Christianity, still chained within the blackness, held there awaiting Judgment Day. Gratefully she catches Chai hollering, "Try it now!" Reaching for a monitor in her backpack, she gives him an unenthused, "Thank you." Hearing something drop, she looks up and around. Chai is no longer present. She gasps. Davis's eyes burst open and he restrains her from the circle's edge. The camera rests beside it. "Chai!" she shouts into the void. There is a low whistle from the blackness. "God," she sobs while searching about. "He must have gotten too close in the dark." "Maybe." The two-way radio erupts. "Bugbee? Bugbee, report." Stand by." She plugs the camera and plays the last clip. It shows an approach to the hole, but points back to her saying, "Thank you. It then directs into the pit before dropping with the sound of a sharp, quivering wince. She abandons all self-restraint. "Chai, we're coming to get you, hang on!" Davis shows concern and places a hand over his heart. His breathing heightens. "Bugby, damn it, what happened? Do you have eyes on him?" She fumbles with the walkie. Stand by, said Dan, are you okay? Dan?" He recognizes her genuine concern and staggers away from the hole. I'm fine. Tied off in their vests, she connects the camera to a cable. A push broom is slid over the grim hole. With the lit-up camcorder dangling over the end, she feeds it down. "Please." He watches the connected monitor as it descends. It's just darkness down there. Cracks riddle the otherwise perfectly smooth inner walls. "That's it," she says. "That's 100 feet. Should we run up and get more cable?" He shakes his head. If he did fall in, it would make it a miracle to survive that. "Bugby, goddammit, report!" blares over the walkie. Flustered, she throws it into the pit. Covering her mouth, she begins rocking. "Oh God. Oh my God." He reaches out to console her but refrains. The following morning is overcast and colder than usual outside the imposing structure of San Francisco City Hall. In full dress uniform and hat, Bugby approaches the concrete steps. She pauses to gather herself. An uncanny feeling turns her around. She finds Davis in a sharp black suit with his well-worn cane. "Let's take a walk." "I can't, I have..." He cuts her off. "We have a meeting at the mayor's office in 10 minutes. He marches ahead. She looks back and forth between him and the commanding government building and hesitantly opts to follow. "I fear I'm responsible for unleashing something unspeakable upon this earth." "Let me guess, you think it leads to hell?" He stops and looks her in the eye. "No, I do not." Her sarcasm abates. "What's the one thing all our theories and events have in common?" "I don't know. Pure evil?" "Death. Nothing more, just death." A shuttle bus lets out passengers. He proceeds past them. She looks at her watch and then catches up. "You're talking about the dead grass, the bacteria, the insects?" Yes. The rodents, murders, sacrificial altar, dinosaurs, even the old cottage itself." "So, just tell me. What do we say? What do you think is responsible?" He halts. "You don't get it. While we look for how this or that died, the most basic thing all these events have in common is simply the fact of death. But not everyone connected with this has even died. Death may only get so far, maybe just a cold, a fight, an accident, or a mistake." "Wait, you're saying just death is down there? No curse, no red guy with a pitchfork or demon?" "Death has no motivation. It is, after all, dead. It is life itself which finds the means to die. We just feel a need to give identity to something which really has none." She looks at her buzzing phone. "I'm sorry, but I have to go." He blocks her. "Think about it. A demon, the devil, or Count Dracula still contains some spiritual essence, something of will. But death is not a ghost. It's what snatches that ghost away." She's struck with a realization. "Our psychic, that's why she couldn't pick up anything." He nods. "Because there's nothing down there to communicate with." "So what are we supposed to tell them?" "First of all, we're not going to tell them any of that shit." She cracks a smile. "I'm not going to lie. What really is going on, I honestly don't know, but I do know death's law and power only got stronger the deeper we got. I realized that if I ever reached it, the source, She cuts him off. Would have to be dead. I may come off a bit morose, but I like myself now. I'm afraid of dying, Gwen. The truth be known, I'm terrified of it, actually. She is humbled. But you can't tell me you don't still want to know what's down there. He deflates. We just can't take any chances on what may happen next. But how do you stop death? You can't kill what's already dead. You treat it like any other dead thing. You put it in its grave. I think the ancients, whoever they were, entombed whatever's down there for very good reason. We need to rebury that thing right now and hope to heaven it goes down quiet. We on the same page? She takes a deep breath. If I still have a job. Approaching midnight, a nearly full moon illuminates the gathering fog. The new crudely formed rectangular shield is made of rebar and micro-reinforced ultra-high-performance concrete. 10 feet thick, it stands on its end beside the pit, chained and ready to be tipped. The scene resembles a giant open grave with tombstone. A large skull has been etched onto it as a warning to the future curious. Alone, Davis steps off the ladder, parts of the safety fencing, and approaches the opening. From a leather satchel, he extracts a white, long stem rose. Cautiously, he extends it over the vile hole as its petals blacken and wilt off into the unlit depths. Giving thought to his satchel, he raises it and tosses it into the deep. He listens for a sound that never comes. It begins to sprinkle. His eyes flutter closed as he stands paralyzed. Wind presses against his back, pushing him towards the inviting darkness. Teetering near its edge, he leans precariously forward. Bugby is there. Gently, she pulls him away. What are you doing here? She wears relaxed civilian clothing and a warm jacket. He comes to his senses and staggers towards the exit. Paying Chai my last respects before they reseal it. Dan. He turns to the abyss. I thought I was winning there for a while, but I've only wasted my life searching for something that was already patiently waiting for me. That makes me a fool, and I'm still going to die. He retreats towards the ladder. Wait. Tiredly he turns and their eyes meet. She raises her gun. What's in the bag, Dan? What? Nothing. Really? Not the missing clothing of a woman you murdered 10 months ago? He's taken aback. She peers at the gloomy hole. Smart place to dispose of the evidence, I'll give you that. Just in time, too. Gwen, where is this coming from? You think we gave you access this whole time because you're such a gifted intellect? He shows surprise. Gwen, please move away from that thing. I believe it's affecting you again. Yeah, that must be it. Though why do you think Sergeant West assigned a homicide detective to an archaeological excavation? For once, he is at a loss for words. You never asked me about her case, her identity, or who may have taken her life. You only cared about this goddamn circle. That's because you resented it. Every time I established something, you couldn't. She gathers herself. I think at your core you're a good man. You called in the body because you wanted to get caught. I think you're reaching and desperate. This won't get your badge back. She winces and shakes it off. There was the next best thing to turning yourself in. Sorry, seems like a stretch. But you're such an insufferable, condescending, self-indulgent bastard. You found yourself enjoying it. All the while, part of you hoped I would finally stop you. He notes her position, 2 steps from the precipitous edge. Listen to me, Gwen. It's that ungodly abyss. It's influencing your head just as it did even mine a few moments ago before you pulled me away. With murderous eyes, she cocks the pistol. Brash enough to call in a murder you just committed. He discreetly eyes her weapon and takes a careful step closer. She tenses up. Gwen, were we ever really friends then? Her heart sinks. Were you always thinking about killing me? He hesitates and calculates his distance to her weapon. She tears up. You made me feel small. You would listen to Chai, but you wouldn't listen to me. He reflects on her words and then shrugs. God, she writhes in frustration. I even point a fucking gun in your face and you're still the cockiest son of a bitch ever. Gwen, look at me. Look at me. You may not admit it, but I know you. He advances a bold step. At your core, I think you're a good person too. This much disdain just isn't who you are. Her grip on the pistol tightens. Fog vapor swirls delicately into the shadowy depths. It's over, she says. I lost. She swings the gun to her temple and clenches her eyes. Stunned, Davis stands frozen. Squeezing the trigger, she flinches at the sound of a distant boom. Disoriented, she scans about. What was that? I believe it was our bulldozer that fell in last night, finally hitting the bottom. The ground quakes. He glances to her lowered gun and then to the pit as 1,000 thoughts race through his eyes. Dear God, I understand now. She looks about with a lost expression. I was still thinking like a mortician. Death was always at its core, yes, but on a far greater scale than I imagined. She struggles to process what is happening. This is not a tomb, Gwen. It's a vault. A vault? But death, how is that valuable? No, not that kind of vault. He's been hiding something, protecting something. Protecting what? That much energy buried that deep in our world can have only one purpose. Her face goes white. He closes his eyes. Evil angels sentenced to the abyss long before Christianity. She puts the pieces together. Still chained within the blackness, held there waiting. She finishes it. Judgment Day. They set their eyes upon the grisly pit. He turns away. Wow, I was really overthinking this. Dan, if that thing just went off for real, wouldn't we be dust already? He notes her unguarded weapon. A low crackling rises to the surface. She listens intently. Wait, I think something is coming up. She whips around to the standing shield. In a blink, she is struck and slams onto her back. Her exposed hand instantly turns grey as she screams in agony, releasing the gun into the depths. The sprinkling turns to rain. She looks up to his imposing form. He is breathing heavily as they lock eyes. His gaze shifts to the toxic shaft beside her. He goes to her knee and grips her shoulder. Trembling, she raises her arms in a defensive posture. Stay calm, he says while squinting through the fog. It may come back around. What? I'm not even sure it was human, but I'm pretty sure you're his type. Eyeing him with mistrust, she grows dizzy and starts panting. What is happening to me? I believe the dead blood from your hand is working its way through your system now, poisoning you. The earth shivers. With a low moan, the shield tips almost imperceptibly towards them as it sinks into the moist soil. He seizes her and pulls her well clear. The rain becomes a downpour. Mud sloshes down the excavation walls as the ladder topples into the sludge. Brandishing his cane, he stands guardedly over her. She shakes her head with a defeated face. We all have our demons, don't we, Dan? Something about her statement registers and he gives her a slow side look. Just tell me, before I die, tell me I pegged you from the start, you sick fucker. He appears conflicted. most of the excavation lights cut out. It is then, her eyes wide open, glimpsing a twisted form lurching through the fog. Dan, I just had a big realization too. He kneels to her. I am a shitty homicide detective. He smiles. Yeah, kind of. Her eyes roll back into her head. He looks up as if suddenly aware of something and then grips his chest. His collapse beside her barely registers. Her head spinning, she detects a shift in movement while sliding past him. Though innocuous, there is nothing to take hold of as her momentum slowly builds through the syrupy surface toward the pit's gaping maw. Wailing wind swirls up from the darkness. Struggling to focus, she manages herself up a bit, forcing herself to consciousness. Dan? He remains motionless. The wind and rain pick up. The sinking slab tips towards her, but it is caught by its restraining chains. Woozy, she discerns a nude, hunched figure bearing a gleaming hand, sickle standing over Davis. It stares inquisitively at him and then directs its gaze at her. A faint whirlwind forms around the mouth of the abyss. Her squirming legs are but a few yards away as the shield strains against its chains in her direction. The weakest link reveals itself as it begins to separate. Peering back, she observes the deluge enveloping Davis, with the beast now absent. Slipping closer to her extinction, she perceives a strange, erratic sound rising from the pit. The funnel of fog and rain attracts lightning strikes, exposing glimpses of a pale form making its way up from the extreme depths. The ground jolts violently, the chains snap and the shield crashes down, crushing the guardrails not far from her feet. She is allowed a brief exhalation. Her attention returns to the shield as it heaves upwards. Immeasurable pressure keeps the substantial slab levitated, as if to receive her. Her panic magnifies as she scrambles to halt her advance. The quaking reaches a crescendo and a full eruption blasts forth as the bulldozer's remains eject miles into the air over the Pacific. The force throws her back and restores the seal to a more upright posture. The giant front blade of the battered machine collides with the earth before her. She lays still in the steady rain, half expecting some other biblical proportion event, when Davis drifts slowly by, otherwise unmoving. A low groan marks the shield's renewed, subtle sway. She reaches out and takes hold of him, only to find herself now going with him back towards the open pit. With a dead hand, she can neither grip his body or the solid bulldozer piece. Grabbing the stable chunk of metal, she attempts to restrain him with her legs, but is unable. Stop! Stop, please! Helpless, she watches his inevitable progress towards the opening, when he begins to rouse. Dan! Wake up, Dan! He goes inanimate once more. Throwing self-preservation aside, she releases the steel and reaches out for his leg as they draw closer to the abyss, which, it seems, will not be denied. Thunder and lightning explode across the sky. Failing to effect a rescue, she clamps her eyes shut, but then senses a halt in their motion. She looks up. Braced before the hole stands the menacing, deformed soul. She squirms frantically to escape, but the steady sledge only delivers her closer. With a deranged shriek, it rears back its blade and swings down to her neck. Instinctively, she blocks it with her dead wrist and feels nothing. Pleasantly surprised, she wrestles for the sickle. Alas, weakened and one-handed, she is unable. It clutches her by the jacket collar and raises her up. Face to face, her expression goes blank. She gapes at its gaunt, grotesque likeness. Drool seeps from its swollen, wheezing lips, its human-like features mostly dead and blackened. Shaking her head, she cannot look away until her horror culminates into a piercing, defeated scream. Mustering her diminished strength, she ineffectually labors to force it into the abyss. It raises its sharp metal against her throat as if to measure its placement for a killing stroke. Raising it back, it hesitates. With a look of loss, she gazes into its face. "Please." The wind howls against the shield as it continues leaning their way. With a feminine touch, she places her hand onto its disfigured face and looks deep into its soul. "Chai, look at me." He seems disoriented. She sobs. "This whole time, tell me it wasn't you." Discolored fluid drips from his one functional eye, which blinks rapidly and involuntarily. Slowly and deliberately, she places a hand onto his chest and presses softly. Offering no resistance, he tips backwards into the deep with a distorted screech. She spots the shield coming down. Raising her arms in a futile effort to block it, she is ripped away and rolls just clear of the angry slab. David lunges but stumbles as it impacts with a deep, rolling thud. Afraid to look, she turns and recognizes that he did not clear the plunging shield. She slumps, curls into a ball, and breaks down. Exactly 1 year passes. The day is sunny at Sutra Heights Park. Bugbee steps up with Davis's dog. She wears white sportswear and a realistic prosthetic hand. Within a newly constructed concrete water feature, she floats several white lilies. A bronze statue of Adolf Sutro is mounted at its center, smiling grandly. There is a historical plaque displaying his biography and a description of his cottage, which once stood there. She lowers her head for a moment of silence and then departs. The Yorkie remains and lets out a bark. She beholds the conspicuously solitary 25-foot wide circular fountain and gently pulls the dog away. If you enjoyed that tale, my dears, and are watching this on YouTube, do remember to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment below. If you're listening on the podcast and would like to reach out to me, find me on social media. I am Lady McCreepster on Facebook, Twitter, as well as Instagram. If you, like Steven, would like to submit a story for consideration, send it to lady.mccreepster@gmail.com. That is all the time we have for this evening, my dears. Do enjoy your Halloween celebrations. Stay safe and sweet dreams.